It happened just seconds before the appetizers even hit the table. The crystal chandelier flickered above the long mahogany dining table, where 24 members of the Harwick family were seated, each one dressed in tailored suits and designer gowns, flashing Rolexes and whispering power plays. Except me. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I sat at the far corner, wearing a sleeveless navy dress I bought on sale at Macy's, because I still remembered what it felt like to earn every dime. The room was buzzing with wine-fueled ego and fake politeness. Then Uncle Philip raised his voice. "Don't let her touch the documents," he said with a smirk, pausing to sip his $700 bottle of Brunello. "She's just a waitress who got lucky." The room froze for a breath, then laughter trickled in. A few cousins chuckled. His wife giggled behind her flute of Prosecco. My father-in-law stared blankly, as if he agreed, but didn't want to say it out loud. And my own mother shifted uncomfortably beside me, looking down at her lap like she wanted to melt into her chair. I clenched my jaw, heart pounding. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to, because my husband, Daniel, rose from his seat like thunder wrapped in a suit.
He didn't yell.
He didn't flinch. He simply turned toward the table and said in the calmest, clearest voice, "She just became your majority shareholder this morning." The wine glass slipped from Uncle Philip's hand. It shattered. And for the first time in years, the Harwick family dinner table went completely silent. Not one fork scraped a plate. Not one breath dared to interrupt the weight of that moment. Daniel reached into his inside jacket pocket and placed the sealed white folder in front of me. "It's all there. The votes. The acquisitions.
The signatures," he said.
Then he turned to Philip. "You sold to a shell company without knowing who was behind it. And she, my wife, owns 52% now." Philip's lips moved, but no sound came out. His neck flushed red, crawling into his cheeks. His wife's Prosecco hit the table with a dull thud. "You're lying," barked Cousin Greg, his voice cracking. "This is some kind of trick." "Then read the paperwork," Daniel replied coolly. I opened the folder and slid the papers across the table. I didn't have to look at them again. I'd already memorized every page, every signature. Months of preparation. Quietly.
Strategically.
Like chess, not checkers. The truth was, I'd worked for this for a year, while bussing tables at their hotel restaurant. They laughed behind my back, called me a charity case, a waitress who married up. They never knew I was taking night classes in finance. Never knew I was investing tip by tip. Never saw me coming. But I saw everything. Uncle Philip's lip twitched. His voice finally broke through. "You manipulated us." "No," I said calmly. "You ignored me. That was your mistake." And just like that, dinner was ruined. But my rise? It was only just beginning. Philip didn't speak for a full 30 seconds. He just sat there, jaw clenched, staring at the document like it was written in fire. Across from him, Aunt Lydia looked like someone had slipped poison into her wine. Her eyes darted between the pages and my face, like she couldn't decide whether to scream or faint. I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands in my lap. I didn't need to gloat. That wasn't why I did this. This wasn't revenge. Not exactly. It was correction. A long overdue rebalancing. My husband's hand slipped under the table and gently squeezed mine. That small touch steadied me, because under this flawless exterior, my heart was racing. "Let me get this straight," Philip finally growled, pushing his chair back with a screech. You, some nobody with zero pedigree, think you're fit to run my company?" I tilted my head.
"No, Uncle."
"I don't think I'm fit. I just own it." The snickers were gone now.
So was the smirking.
What replaced them was something far more delicious. Panic. Greg stood up, his tie crooked from too many rushed gulps of whiskey. "There's no way this is legal." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You signed. You all signed. You offloaded your shares when the market dipped, remember? Trying to cut losses. Sell low and wait to buy back in." "And we did," Greg insisted, pointing a finger. To Benson Holdings. Which I created, I said simply. Under my name. Quietly. Efficiently. Lydia laughed dryly. You mean to tell us you manipulated an entire buyout while wiping down our dessert trays? I didn't manipulate anything. You handed me everything. You just didn't bother to see who was on the other end of the wire. Philip's fists tightened on the table. You don't know this business. You've never sat in the boardroom, negotiated contracts, handled vendor blowback. I've watched all of you do it, I interrupted, and watched you fail miserably. He flinched. I continued, voice steady. In 1 quarter, your hotel division tanked by 17%. You blamed the economy. I saw the invoices. You overpaid a crooked contractor by $1.2 million, Greg's contact, wasn't it? In Q2, your lead supplier filed bankruptcy. But you ignored 3 earlier warnings from compliance because you were too busy golfing. And Q3? You nearly lost the rights to the Harwick Manhattan property due to unpaid taxes. That nearly ruined your bond rating. Silence. No one had ever spoken to Philip like this. Not in 30 years. Certainly not a woman in a department store dress. Ask yourself, I said gently, do you really believe I don't know the business? For once, Philip looked smaller, like someone had deflated the arrogant shell of him. But it wasn't over. Enough, Greg said, voice trembling. This is a setup. You probably used his money to buy us out. He pointed at Daniel like a child tattling to a teacher. You're nothing without him. I rose from my seat. Say that again. Greg blinked. Go ahead, I said. Say I'm nothing without my husband. Say that I'm still just the waitress you used to ask to bring extra napkins like I was invisible. He didn't. Because deep down, he knew the truth. I worked. I learned. I earned. You were born into it and ran it into the ground. I said. The only reason the Harwick Empire still exists is because someone who actually cared about it, me, was watching. Then I looked him dead in the eye. And you'll be reporting to me starting Monday. Philip stormed out first. He didn't even look back, just shoved his chair away so hard it toppled over, grabbed his coat off the back of a waiter's arm, and barreled through the grand dining hall like a wounded animal. The maitre d' flinched as he passed. Greg followed after him seconds later, muttering something under his breath, his face flushed red with humiliation. Aunt Lydia stayed seated. She just sat frozen, lips pursed, like she was trying to calculate how much of her legacy had just turned to dust. Daniel leaned toward me and whispered, I think it's time we go. But I didn't move yet. Not until I said what needed to be said. I turned to the rest of the table. My mother, my cousins, the wives who used to talk over me like I was help, the men who never made eye contact with me unless I was clearing their plates. I know what you're all thinking, I said. That I betrayed the family. That I should have stayed in my lane. That I somehow cheated. No one said a word. But let me ask you this. I continued, voice clear. Where were you when they ridiculed me? When they called me a waitress at every gathering like it was an insult? When they ignored every contribution I made, laughed at every idea I shared? Where were you when they slammed the door on me, again and again because I didn't look like one of you? Still, no one moved. Just blinking eyes, lowered gazes, and the occasional shift of a wine glass. I stayed silent for years, I said. But I never stopped moving. While you dismissed me, I read your reports, studied your patterns, memorized your weaknesses. I didn't need a seat at your table to beat you. I just needed to own the table. Lydia swallowed hard. One of my younger cousins, Isabel, the only one who had ever shown me a crumb of kindness, whispered. I had no idea. I gave her a soft smile. That's because they never let you see me. But now you will. And with that, I gathered the folder, turned to Daniel, and we walked out together. The parking valet rushed to bring around the car, and I noticed the way everyone outside, staff, waiters, even other diners, were glancing at me now, like they could feel a shift in the air, like they knew something had just changed. As I sat in the passenger seat, Daniel slid behind the wheel, turned the ignition, and asked gently, How do you feel? I exhaled. Like I just cracked open a dam I've been holding shut for 10 years. He smiled at me. I've never been prouder. I glanced at my reflection in the side mirror. Same girl, same face, but with something different in her eyes now. Not fear. Not hesitation.
Not the need to be liked. Power.
By Monday morning, the entire Harwick enterprise felt it. Emails went out. A formal press release was crafted, one I had personally approved. The wording was clean, diplomatic, but the message was unmistakable. A leadership transition was underway. I walked into the corporate headquarters in a crisp black pantsuit and sensible heels. The receptionist, who'd once brushed me off as Mr. Harwick's wife, nearly choked on her coffee when I stepped into the elevator alone and headed to the executive floor. Every step I took echoed with the weight of 10 years of silence turned into strategy. And when I opened the door to the boardroom, all their faces turned to me. This time, none of them laughed. Because this time, I was at the head of the table. The first board meeting was already in motion when I entered, but the moment I stepped into the room, everything stopped. 12 men and 2 women sat around the sleek, polished table. Old money, old egos, and older grudges bundled in $1,000 suits. Most of them had known me as Daniel's little project. The waitress who married up. A pretty face without business sense.
Now?
They had to call me Madam Chair. I took my seat at the head of the table, laid my notebook open with precision, and said in a steady voice, "Let's begin." No one argued. Daniel sat 2 seats away, no longer the face of our partnership, just a supporting figure, exactly as we'd agreed. This was my operation now. He was proud, not threatened. That was the difference between him and the men I now managed. One of the directors, Martin Blake, a smug former executive who once offered to mentor me with too many late-night texts, cleared his throat. "We weren't expecting you to step in quite so directly." I gave a half-smile. "I've found surprises are effective in business." He shifted in his seat. Another board member, Sylvia Kemp, nodded thoughtfully. I reviewed the documents. Everything's in order. But I have to ask, what exactly is your vision for Harwick moving forward? Finally, a real question. I leaned in slightly. Efficiency, transparency, modernization. We're drowning in bloated contracts and nepotism. Our tech division hasn't been audited in over 2 years. The hospitality arm is hemorrhaging cash. And your marketing director, I turned to Martin, hasn't shown a single year of net positive growth. Martin flushed. So, I continued, effective today, there will be internal audits, restructuring of senior roles, and a full strategic overhaul. I've already assembled a shadow team. They'll be here by end of week.
Gasps.
Whispers. Panic behind poker faces. You've been planning this for a while, Sylvia murmured. I had to, I said. This company could have been great a long time ago. But too many people were too comfortable doing too little. I let that sink in. Any other questions? I asked, voice calm. Silence. Then let's move to the next item. Later that evening, back at home, I stood barefoot in the kitchen chopping vegetables when my mom called. She hadn't spoken to me since the dinner. I stared at the screen before picking up. Hi, Mom. She was quiet for a second. Then her voice cracked. I just wanted to say,
I'm sorry.
For not standing up for you that night. For all the other nights, too. A long breath escaped my chest. Thank you. That means a lot. I was scared, she admitted. Scared of Philip. Scared of losing our place in the family. I didn't realize you were building your own place all along. I wasn't, I said. I was building a new table altogether. She laughed softly. You always were stronger than the rest of us. For the first time in years, we spoke like mother and daughter, not just awkward guests in the same room. By Friday, changes were rolling in. HR announced terminations and new hiring policies. Middle management scrambled to catch up. Investors started calling, and for the first time, they were asking for me. But not everyone was happy. Philip hadn't disappeared. He was angry, desperate, and rich. A dangerous mix. On Sunday evening, an envelope showed up at my doorstep. No return address. Just my name scrawled in bold ink. Inside, photos, bank statements, something meant to scare me, a threat, and with it, a single note. You took what's mine. Now I'll take you down. I stared at the words for a long moment. Then I smiled. Let him come. He had no idea who he was dealing with anymore. The moment I saw the note, something cold and focused settled over me. Not fear, clarity. The kind that sharpens your mind like a blade. Philip had always relied on fear. Fear kept the board in line. Fear kept the family submissive. And fear was exactly what I'd trained myself to live without. But he wasn't just lashing out emotionally.
He was planning something.
By Monday morning, I had already handed the envelope over to our new head of internal security, an ex-FBI forensic analyst named Alyssa Grant, someone I'd personally recruited when I realized how deep the Harwick rot might go. This is bigger than a threat, she said, scanning the financial records Philip had sent anonymously. He's not just trying to scare you. He's showing you what he knows. Where you've moved money. Who your shell companies are. He wants to corner you into backing down. I shook my head. He won't. Because I didn't do anything illegal. Every move I made was within compliance. I made sure of that. Alyssa leaned forward. Then you don't just defend. You go on offense. That night, I called an emergency board session. No warning. No calendar invites. Just a room filled with shocked, anxious faces. When Philip walked in with 2 lawyers at his side, thinking he could blindside me, I was already waiting at the head of the table, screen lit behind me, folders stacked high. I stood up. Before anyone says a word, let me show you something.
Click.
On the screen appeared a spreadsheet, tracking every unauthorized bonus Philip had wired to himself over the past 8 years.
Click.
An email thread popped up, one where he instructed Greg to ghost vendors and redirect payments to dummy accounts.
Click.
Photos, meeting logs, surveillance footage. Then I looked straight at him. You thought you had secrets, but I've had yours for months. His face drained of color. You blackmailed employees, used company funds to buy political favors, took bribes from a competitor in exchange for burying 2 of our expansion projects. I have everything. I didn't come to take your seat, Philip. I came to break the chair you thought you couldn't be removed from. Gasps spread through the room. Someone dropped their pen. He lunged forward, knocking over a glass. This is slander. You don't know what you're doing, you ungrateful little. Enough, I barked, my voice slicing through the room. Security. The doors opened. 2 guards stepped in. Philip looked around the room, begging with his eyes, but no one moved. Not Greg. Not Lydia. Not even my mother-in-law. He was alone. And he knew it. As he was escorted out, I turned to the board. This is the cost of looking away. This is what happens when you let entitlement steer the ship. We clean house now, or we lose everything. Sylvia, stoic, sharp, stood up slowly. You have my vote. Followed by another. Then another. Unanimous. I had done it, not through a scandal,
Not with a bribe.
but with discipline, strategy, and truth. 3 weeks later, Harwick Enterprises reported its strongest quarterly performance in over a decade. Press coverage exploded, articles with headlines like "From Waitress to Wall Street Titan" and "The Woman Who Silenced a Dynasty with Strategy."
But none of that mattered to me.
What mattered was standing in that office, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, looking out over the city and knowing I didn't just survive them. I outgrew them. And I was just getting started. That night, Daniel brought home takeout from our favorite hole-in-the-wall Thai place. I curled up next to him on the couch in sweatpants, barefoot, makeup wiped off. You know, he said, smiling at me, I liked you just as much when you were still bussing tables. I looked at him and grinned. I know. And I meant it. Because that was the difference between all of them and us. They valued power. I valued growth. And I earned every inch of it.